How to eat out at restaurants and still lose weight and lower your A1C. Now, we're going to be going through a little unknown trick that's really going to change things entirely in order to make this much, much easier. So stick around. Now, what I'm about to walk you through is one section of a much larger workshop that I did. And the workshop was called The Holiday Hack, how to manage big holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas. Now, today I want to just take you through a small portion of that so that you can apply that small portion to eating out at restaurants, right? I will be putting the link to the entire workshop down below, but today I'm going to, respect your time. We're going to keep it really concise. If you want to watch the whole workshop, then you can. That'll be down below in the description. Now, what I'm about to walk you through can be applied to eating out at your favorite restaurant, eating your favorite takeout, Pizza Fridays, Taco Tuesdays. It can be applied to your birthday. It can be applied to any scenario where food, is going to be a little bit more difficult, right? So, first of all, though, we got to start with how fat loss actually works. Otherwise, it's not going to make any sense, right? So, you've got a metabolism because you are alive, right? Now, here, what I've done is I've broken down your metabolism into the three components, right? The biggest component is about 70%. It is your basal metabolic rate, your BMR. This is your body just keeping the lights on. You're an engine that never turns off because you are alive, right? That's about 70% of your metabolism. The next 15% is called your thermic effect of food. This is the amount of energy that your body expends breaking down, digesting food, and absorbing nutrients from that food. And then finally, the last component, which is also about 15%, is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, this stands for any movement that is not planned exercise. Any movement that goes from blinking to fidgeting to tapping your foot to walking around the house to doing chores to walking around work to going grocery shopping. All of those things come under NEAT unless it is planned exercise like going for a walk or going to the gym. Right now, these three components make up your metabolism. All right. Now, your metabolism is obviously measurable, right? And we measure our metabolism using a unit of energy, right? That unit of energy is called a calorie. Now, a calorie is a calorie, just like an inch is an inch and a kilometer is a kilometer. It's that simple, right? It is really that simple. Now, let's say your metabolism expends 1,800 calories per day. This is just an example. Let's just say your metabolism expends 1,800 calories per day. If you were to consume 1,800 calories per day, on average, for a week, you would stay the same. You wouldn't lose body fat. You wouldn't gain body fat. You would fluctuate weight in the form of water from sodium and glycogen, etc., but body fat would stay the same. This is called calorie maintenance. All right. If you were to consume more than 1,800 calories on average for a week, you would gain body fat. This is called a calorie surplus. Now, if you were to consume less calories than what your body expends, if you were to consume less than 1,800 calories per day on average for a week, you would lose body fat. This is called a calorie deficit. Now, there's no way to cheat this. There's no way to shortcut this, right? Every diet is simply a different method of achieving a calorie deficit. Every diet that exists is to create a calorie deficit. You haven't got to count calories, but calories still count. Now, this is something that I created. It's called the trifecta rule, right? The trifecta shows us that it's not what you eat in isolation on its own, right? One donut, for instance, doesn't matter. One donut isn't going to change anything. It's insignificant. It doesn't matter. It's one donut. It's not going to change anything. One donut is not going to ruin your month. Let's just say you have one donut in a month. Is that going to ruin your month? Of course not. Let's say you have one donut once a month. Is that going to increase your A1C? Of course it's not. It's one donut. It's insignificant, right? So it's not what you eat in isolation. Instead, it is portion, how much of it you eat, frequency, how often you eat it, and balance, what else you eat. So let's use the example of pizza Fridays, right? Every Friday you have pizza, right? Insert whatever food you want to insert. But we're just using pizza as an example, right? Now, a few 3-4 slices of pizza, portion, that's fine. A large pizza, probably going to be a little bit more difficult, right? Portion, how much of it you eat. Frequency, one, few slices of pizza is fine. What about having 3-4 slices of pizza every day for a week? Is that fine? It's probably going to be a little bit difficult, right? Frequency, how often you eat it, and then balance, right? Pizza Fridays is fine. You're having that for dinner tonight. Fantastic. Can you also have spaghetti and garlic bread for lunch and pancakes for breakfast? Nah, that's probably going to be a bit difficult, right? You can have all of those things. You can have pancakes, you can have pasta and garlic bread, and you can have pizza. Can you have them all in the same day? Probably not. It's going to be a little bit difficult. Okay. So, what is the holiday hack? And exactly how do you implement it, right? How can you implement the holiday hack to allow you to eat out at restaurants and still be able to lose weight and lower your A1C? Remember, this can be applied to any scenario, right? So, low calorie, low carb foods versus high calorie, high carb foods. Now, whether you count calories and carbs or not, they still count, they still matter. Whether you go that route of tracking them, of counting them, it is whether you go that route or not, it is still imperative that you manage both calories and carbs accordingly. Otherwise, you will gain body fat and your blood sugars will take a one-way ticket to the moon. All right. But you can eat high calorie, high carb foods. Let me say that again. You can eat high calorie, high carb foods as long as you make an allowance for that elsewhere in your diet by eating fewer calories and carbs. So let's assess the difference between the two. So over here, we've got high calorie, high carb foods. Likely some of your favorite foods. Likely going to eat out at a restaurant, right? Chinese food, Mexican food, restaurant food, right? Pizza, fast food, waffles, rice, pasta, bread, sandwiches, burgers, right? French fries, potato chips, any of these things, donuts, ice cream, candy, all of these things are high calorie, high carb foods, and some of them are likely some of your favorite foods, right? Now, let's compare those to low calorie, low carb foods, likely, mostly whole, fresh foods. Foods like Greek yogurt, natural yogurt, cottage cheese, berries, raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, shrimp, chicken breast, turkey, whether it's breast or turkey bacon, eggs, any which way you want them, right? Protein shakes, almonds, pistachios, depending on how much of them you eat, obviously. Fiber one bars, popcorn, depending on the type of popcorn, but popcorn can be very low calorie, low carb, depending on the one you buy. Spinach, any kind of vegetable, mushroom, bell peppers, kale, carrots, cauliflower, broccoli, celery, Brussels sprouts, cucumber, lettuce, asparagus, zucchini, arugula. The list goes on. There's tons of them, right? Now, this is where the gold dust comes in, all right? So let's say, this is an example. Let's say your weight loss calories are 1,600 calories, and let's say your carb goal is 120 grams of carbs a day. So it's Pizza Friday. You're having pizza tonight, right? How are you going to have pizza, still lose weight, and lower your A1C? Well, first of all, we need to adhere to these numbers. You will not lose weight and lower your A1C unless you adhere to your weight loss calories and your carb range. As long as you adhere to your calories and your carb range, you will lose weight and lower your A1C. Let me say that again. As long as you adhere to your calorie range and your carb, you count them or not, you will achieve results. You will lose weight and lower your A1C. So, these are your weight loss calories. This is your carb goal. Your pizza at dinner tonight is going to cost you a lot of calories and carbs, right? It's going to be very calorie and very carb dense. So, how are we going to make that fit? Simple, by eating fewer calories and carbs elsewhere in our day, right? Breakfast slash lunch, 400 calories, 30 grams of carbs. On these days, Pizza Fridays, whatever, it will help if you have 2 meals instead of 3, because you're going to theoretically you're going to consume fewer calories and carbs across 2 meals than you are 3, right? So whenever you are eating high calorie, high carb foods, we want to make an allowance for that by eating lower calorie, lower carb foods elsewhere in our diet. And that, is these foods here. You can go on Google and you can find more. This is just a list that I quickly compiled. You'll be able to find way more than this, right? Good. Now, obviously, it's imperative that you get prepared. This can't just happen on its own. It's imperative that there is at least some forethought or planning ahead. Otherwise, how can this happen? It can't. Think of it this way: always have the food that you need readily available when you need it. Right. So at some point in the week, you've got to sit down and spend 15 minutes writing a list of all of the foods you need, for the next 7 days. At some point, you're going to have to head to the grocery stores, and before each day, especially if it's Pizza Fridays, you need to assess your day to consider high calorie, high carb food versus low calorie, low carb foods. Now, as long as you adhere to these very simple trick and tip right here that we've been walking through, as long as you adhere to this, you can eat out at your favorite restaurants. You can go grab your favorite takeout. You can apply any scenario and still lose weight and still lower your A1C. Now, what this also means is food freedom. Food freedom means two things. You're able to eat the food you love once you learn how to implement the carb regulation protocol, which is the entirety of what we've just been going through, is what I call the carb regulation protocol, right? That is what I coach, is how you're able to eat your favorite everyday foods and still lose weight and lower your A1C. No foods, for any of the ladies that I coach, no foods are off limits ever again, right? That's what food freedom means, number one. Number two, it means that you're able to eat the food you love without guilt or shame. How many of you experience these negative emotions after consuming certain foods, whether it be bread, potatoes, or pasta, whatever the food? Here's a perspective shift that changes everything. There are no good or bad foods. Not anymore. You are no longer going to refer to foods as good or bad. Instead, there are more nutritious and less nutritious foods. This is important because as soon as you assign morality to food, you also assign emotions, good and bad, to foods. So if you continue to assign morality to food, you will continue to reinforce a negative relationship with food and will always experience guilt and shame whenever you consume certain foods. All of this means, everything that we're going through here today means that you're able to eat your favorite pizza guilt-free. You're able to eat at your go-to restaurant guilt-free. You're able to eat the same foods as the rest of the family guilt-free. All of this meaning you're finally able to get off the roller coaster and consistently drop pounds and lower your A1C. Doesn't matter what diet you follow. If you're not in a calorie deficit, you will not elicit fat loss. So why would you follow a restrictive diet? Something which is impossible to stick to. Otherwise, you would have already done it. There's nothing wrong with you. Nothing wrong with you. The approach is the problem. Why would you try to adhere to such a miserable approach when you can achieve the same outcome, fat loss, whilst eating the food that you love, right? Whilst eating the food that you love. Just like Casey, right? Casey has lost over 30 pounds so far and lowered her A1C down to 6. Here are some snippets of what she's been eating from her own food diary: Wendy's, Dunkin' Donuts, Taco Bell. Now, I'm not saying you have to or should eat these foods. What I want you to do is, imagine your favorite foods here. Now, Michelle lowered her A1C down to 4.8, as well as achieved her goal weight of 140 pounds. She also had some Taco Bell, some Papa John's, some Arby's, some Burger King, And these ladies are exactly the same as you. They've struggled with weight loss for years, decades, and many their whole lives. There have been lifelong cycles of self sabotage. There's been emotional eating. There's been mountains of stress. There's been a lifetime of negative self talk. Yet, even so, they've still achieved these life changing outcomes. And you can too, because you are absolutely no different. You are absolutely no different. I hope you found this helpful, right? If you did find it helpful, let me know down below in the comments if you've got any questions, right, about what I've just spoken about, what we've just walked through. Please do comment those down below. I don't want you to leave any more confused than when you came. So take everything you've just learned, apply it, practice it, learn it, embed it into your lifestyle, and go out there, enjoy your favorite restaurant food, enjoy your favorite takeout, and finally be able to lose that weight, lower your A1C, and achieve remission because it's enjoyable. It's finally sustainable. All right. See you in the next one. Take care.